Hello and welcome to the Capital Games Movie Club. I am the Wiz.
And I'm Zero.
Zero, as this is your choice of movie this week, why don't you go ahead and introduce?
This one is by Wong Kar-Wai, and it is a biopic on martial artist Ip Man titled The Grandmaster.
Now, what makes Ip Man special that required or not required, but felt compelled for a much liked director like Wong Kar-Wai to do a film about him?
Well, for those who aren't really in tune with the world of martial arts, Ip Man is also known as the teacher who instructed Bruce Lee.
Hmm.
And so, for anyone who has a love and reverence for Bruce Lee, then the Ip Man biopics are kind of a fun little curiosity because you can sort of see some of the legendary tales that have been spun about Bruce Lee's master.
Right. So, and the all the marketing on this movie pretty much made it very clear who this guy was, to the point where the one thing you would know about the film is this is the guy who trained Bruce Lee, and that's why you should watch this. So interesting. Okay. Um, what before we get into what we thought about the film, let's talk a little bit about Wong Kar Wai. Have you seen any of his other movies?
In the Mood for Love, I
Mm.
actually was introduced to by one of my ex-girlfriends, actually.
Oh, okay. Don't put that against him.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was a interesting film. It was kind of on the romancy sort of end of things, and while I confess I'm not the biggest fan of romance, that one sort of softened me up that I can appreciate them now.
Yeah. And one thing with Wong Kar Wai is that visually he is a very interesting director. He knows how to use the visual medium of movies to create a compelling space. So when you told me about this movie and that Wong Kar Wai directed it, immediately I was like, okay, so at least visually this will be an exciting, interesting movie. So I was excited that way. Um, so why don't we just get into it? What did you think of the Grandmaster?
I thought it was a great movie. As expected, the action sequences are just a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the storytelling, uh, there are some issues with, and I'll get more into that when we get into the spoiler part of this broadcast and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, but overall, just I would still recommend folks who may not be the biggest fan of martial arts movies to still check it out. Mostly because just the cinematography is just an absolute treat.
Yeah, visually it is a very good looking movie. Lighting is great. Um, Set design is pretty good in this when it comes to the fight scenes. Choreography in the fight scenes are good. Um, I'm not as positive as you are about the movie, and like I have a bunch of issues. Um, you mentioned the fact that the story is not the best, and that's saying something because the way the movie is, I mean, we're not going to spoil it right now, but let's just say for the time being that the the story kind of breaks apart at a certain point that just how do I put this, that makes you question why the movie was made in the first place. Uh, but with that said, I mean the fight scenes are good. I do agree with you, but I had an issue with how they were directed. When you have actors who are capable of doing these fight scenes and doing them competently, like I think Tony Leung and especially Zhang Ziyi, um, they've shown in other movies that they can do these fight scenes and they can do it very competently. But the direction that Wong Kar-Wai chose to shoot them in and use the editing they used made it feel like he didn't have the confidence that maybe a director would have if they thought that their actors were competent in doing these fight scenes. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I, in a sense, I guess you could say, the fight scenes did feel a little bit restrained.
Not just restrained. The editing and the way they shot it were shot in a way when you have an actor who couldn't exactly do the fight scenes as needed. You would do a bunch of camera tricks and a bunch of how to put it, some camera techniques, editing techniques to hide the fact that a stunt double was used in order to do certain scenes. Now, that may be the case, and we just don't know that maybe Tony Leung couldn't do these certain scenes. But it didn't seem like that in some of the scenes in the movie. Because there are some scenes where it's clear that Leung is doing the scenes correctly and is able to perform the stunts. But then there are other scenes where I'm watching it and I'm like, why did they edit it this way? Because it just looks like someone else is doing it. And it
Yeah,
was.
and
Go ahead.
there is potentially a reason, but I'll get into that during the
Okay.
spoiler portion of this,
Okay.
because there was something I did read regarding the cast and the production of the film.
Hmm.
So there may be a reason there were some scenes that were cut with a stunt double in some of these scenes and
Mm.
everything.
Okay. Okay. If that's the case, that's the case. But then it
Yeah.
kind of it kind of does cheapen the fight sequences at times. It really depends on how well it's shot. But it definitely felt like in some scenes they were able to use the actors and the actors were able to perform the stunts well enough to make the scene work. But then on other scenes, it's like it's like they're hiding the fact they're using a different person, and it's distracting to a certain extent. Um, yeah, the fight scenes are good. The best fight scene is in the third act. We're not going to get into why that is right now. That'll be in spoilers. But because it's in the third act, it also made me question a few things about the decisions, the way the movie was made. So, the other issue I had, um, and it was a big issue I had, when you use visual language in a movie, you use certain techniques to emphasize certain types of emotions, feelings, or impacts that you use when doing different camera techniques. And the main thing is impact in this movie. So when let's say a punch goes in and it hits somebody and you use a certain technique to show the impact, then the only time you would use that specific technique is to emphasize that impact. What I'm talking about is slowdown in the movie. And in the beginning of the movie, when they have the fight scene in the rain, if you watch the trailer, it's all over the trailers. Um, they use they use slowdown to emphasize hits that were made by Itmon, and it was good in that part. But then they use slowdown on almost everything in the movie. When it's a person singing, or a random conversation, or someone walking, or just in almost everything in the movie, there seems to be a slowdown of the movie to emphasize something. And it's almost to the point where I notice the slowdown when they do the slowdown, and it loses all meaning because they used it so much. So I just came away from that going, you had an interesting way of using that, but then you kind of ruined it because you just kept using it for random different things.
Yeah, as far as the slowdowns in some of the non-combative scenes,
Mm-hmm.
the only rationale that I could come up with was maybe um, Wong Kar-Wai was trying to emphasize time that in those moments maybe a Ip Man felt time sort of come to a standstill, and that's really the only thing I could come up with. But yeah,
Mm.
just I can definitely agree that the use of the slowdown was just a little bit much on some of the non-combative scenes, and it just had me sort of scratching my head, going, okay, well, I don't know what the emphasis is unless he's trying to emphasize that in these few moments, felt the world sort of come to a grind to sort of etch these particular memories within his soul, but that's the only rationale I could even come up with.
And the fact that we're kind of grasping at straws to figure out why he used this so liberally in the movie, I think just shows that they misused it to a certain point where it kind of lost all meaning, and it just felt like, hey, this is a cool trick, let's use it, and that was it, which is disappointing because you would think that somebody who has made such great movies in the past that with his visual style that he would be able to create a movie with a character this interesting with those techniques in an interesting way. And it just seems like he used it just for flash. And that kind of like, it's okay, it's not bad, but it kind of sucks because you're sitting there watching the movie and going, why do you keep using this? And you just come away from the movie going, oh, they just use it to use it. Okay, that's kind of silly. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. Anything else you want to say about it before we get into spoilers?
Um, as far as just overall, um, it was kind of interesting. Just I didn't realize that it was a Wong Kar-Wai film until recently when we were talking about just things to pick for this podcast
Mm-hmm.
because I watched it last year and I was just like, ooh, interesting, biopic on Ip Man. Okay, I'll check it out on Netflix and see how it is, and then when you had made mention on the podcast of, oh, just I've been itching to watch a Wong Kar-Wai film, and I was just like,
Yeah.
oh well, perfect.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't even know this film was made, to be completely honest, because the only time I really started paying attention to Wong Kar-Wai was when I started getting into Criterion films, and of course, In the Mood for Love is in the collection, and Chungking Express is in the box set that they have for Wong Kar-Wai. Wong Kar-Wai has a box set now that's on there, and visually, like you can just tell he is a fascinating director. Um, but yeah, uh,
Yeah.
uh,
I guess kind of and actually the thing I was waiting to get into
okay,
regarding the scene cuts where it seems like a stunt double's sort of working in it.
yeah, go ahead.
I guess it's not really quite in the spoiler section of stuff. Apparently just this is a film that was apparently in development hell, and one of the reasons
Yes.
was apparently Tony Leung, he had broke his arm while training in the Wing Chun style of Kung Fu in preparation for this movie.
Mm-hmm.
And that may have been why some of the scenes may have been cut with a stunt double doing some of the action scenes
Hmm.
because he may have been out with the injury and they were just like, okay, well, we can't have this sitting in too much development hell since we announced it back in 2008. So the show must go on. We gotta keep moving. So that's really the only thing I can think of that might explain some of the weird camera cuts for the fight scenes where a stunt double was in, but
Hmm.
I don't know.
I mean, that is a possibility, and it is Leong's scenes that those cuts happen. So that does make sense. Let's just get into performances real quick. The only two to really to talk about is Zhang Ziyi and Tony Leung. I got a question actually before we get into it.
Mhm.
Maybe you know the answer to this. When I was introduced to Zhang Ziyi, it was of course with Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, and She was known in the states as Zhang Ziyi, but when I look at posters now and advertisements now, she goes by Ziyi Zhang. Why is that? Was her name made wrong in the original advertisements, or what is the reason for that?
So, in Chinese culture, it's much like Japanese culture, where typically the surname is always first, and
Okay.
then you have the rest of the name as secondary. So,
Hmm.
like for example, Zhang Ziyi, Zhang would be her family name or surname. Ziyi would be her first and middle name. So
Oh, okay.
that's how the structure works out. And
Okay.
um, like Tony Leung, his Chinese name is technically trying to remember
Chuai
here.
Leung.
Yeah. His family name Leung, and then Chui Hua is his first and middle.
Mhm.
So in like Chinese films, he would be known as Leung Chui Hua, and that's just kind of how it is. And then I guess for the marketing for this movie, I guess they decided to kind of um, flip the names around
Mhm.
for Zhang Ziyi because just that was it was kind of one of those things to sort of go, actually, maybe we haven't quite explained that, just uh, Z is her first and middle name, and then Zhang is her family name.
Mhm. Okay. All right. I was just curious about that because it's not a big it's not really a big deal, but I watched it, like, well, I thought it was the other way around. So okay, that's good to know. Performances. Tony Leung was good as Ipman. A bit wooden, a bit like, I guess that's the character. He's emotionless to a certain extent, and just kind of
Um,
is.
Stoic is really the best way to
Yeah.
put it.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Okay. But Ziyi Zhang, I think, is the best performance in the movie as Gonger, and well, that's also because her character is the only one I feel that has any kind of depth to it. But yeah, I like Ziyi Zhang in this. I like her as an actress pretty much from anything I've seen of her. It's limited, but she's a good actress. I like her, so it was nice to see her again.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I can definitely agree with Tony Leung's character or portrayal of Ip Man being a bit wooden and stoic, but from a lot of the accounts on Ip Man, it seems that he was very much that way. Just he was very, very stoic, kind of in the face of just both good and bad,
Hmm.
and that ends up being more apparent when you get into the later stuff, when we get into the spoiler cast
Yeah.
part of this. Zhang Ziyi, um, her performance as Gonger was really, really on the nose, especially with sort of like the fierce drive to honor her family and also to reclaim the honor of her clan towards
Yeah.
the later part of the movie.
Hmm.
It was just kind of on the nose, just how fierce the attitude that she had was in the portrayal, and she sort of nails the sort of the fiery martial artist
Hmm.
sort of vibe. So yeah, just definitely love that on her portrayal of Gonger. And interestingly enough, as far as the performances go, this one is sort of neat for someone like me who's a bit of a language nerd.
Okay.
So in the scenes where uh, Ip Man is sort of talking about what goes on and everything. He narrates those scenes in Cantonese Chinese, but in some of the other scenes where Gong Er is speaking, and there are a lot of the Northern Chinese masters, then the narration changes to Mandarin Chinese, which I thought was really interesting.
Hmm. Okay. That is interesting. I couldn't tell because I don't know either. So I
Yeah, I know a bit of both.
okay. Hey.
So for me, it was just kind of neat. I was like, oh, that's kind of a neat portrayal, especially since Cantonese is a specific dialect that is very much something that Hong Kongers are sort of fierce about the heritage on. So it was just kind of neat, just noticing the different languages being spoken in certain scenes, depending on who was in the scene.
Hmm. Okay. Um. All right. Why don't we just get to the main thrust of things? I think the movie is. I think the movie's okay. I think it visually is entertaining. It's got good fight scenes. The way the movie looks is really good, but the story and the screenplay is a miss for me. I and we'll get into spoilers as to why I'm really not happy with how the story turned out. But it's entertaining. It's good. But for someone like Wong Kar-Wai to make this, and for it to be what I would consider writing wise kind of a mess, is really disappointing. It's still good. It's funny because it's Wong Kar-Wai's most popular film on IMDb, and which I guess shouldn't surprise me really, but it really just I watched the film and I just came out of it going, it's okay, and that's a disappointment enough for me. So it's good, but it's not great. I would I recommend it to some people, but not overall. So it's okay. It's an okay movie.
Yeah, um, and as said, I mean, it's as I said, sort of towards the beginning, just um, it's not going to be like anything that's super groundbreaking, but
Hmm.
I thought it was fairly entertaining and
Yeah.
wasn't like absolutely terrible, but at the same time, it wasn't exceptional either.
Well, you enjoyed this more than I did. I think is what I'm getting out of this.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think for me, it was mostly just uh, most of the fight scenes were just really interesting, especially just with the emphasis on some of the more brutal strikes and everything.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So now that we've said our piece on this, let's go into spoilers. If you are still interested in seeing the movie, you can turn off right now and come back to it when you're done. So we will get into spoilers in five, four, three, two, one. Okay. So, like we mentioned before, I think visually this is is a good movie, but the story and screenplay is a mess. And I'm just gonna go right to why I think this is, and it deals with the third act. Now, if you take the third act away into its own movie and watch it as a short film, it's good. It's actually interesting, and it's entertaining. But the problem with the third act is that Itman, the main character of the movie, is nowhere to be found in the third act. It's all about Gong Er. And Gong Er is an interesting enough character where I sat there on the third act going, why not just make a movie about Gong Er? I'm like, why? She's obviously an interesting character. You can make an interesting movie out of it. And you definitely have a good ending here. So why not? Why not just do it about Gong Er instead of Ipman at this point? And
Yeah,
if the answer is, well, Ip Man and his life wasn't really that interesting, then that's a problem when it comes to making the film. Because if it turns out that the most interesting thing that happened to Ip Man was he trained Bruce Lee, and then in the end you only see Bruce Lee for 30 seconds as a little kid, it's kind of like, then why make the movie in the first place to me?
yeah. Unfortunately, um, as easy as it is to say, why not just make a movie about Gong Er?
Hmm.
I think the issue with that would mostly lay in the fact of something that they allude to in the movie that a woman in in the martial arts realm
Hmm.
is just not a thing. At least back in those times,
Okay.
and that was why just in the Western edit of this movie, you hear her father just emphasize, you know, just quit martial arts and just become a doctor, and and that's why there's just such an emphasis on that. And unfortunately, due to that, a lot of history for female martial artists during that time sort of evaporates.
Right.
So, so unfortunately, just that's probably why there may have not have been enough to sort of make a story about her. But that's a whole different thing.
But
And
zero. Go
go
ahead.
ahead.
Okay, but Zero, you can make an interesting movie about that. You can make a movie about a woman who's being held down by, I hate using this term, patriarchal reasons, that who wants to become a master of martial arts but can't because the culture that surrounds her is against her doing that. You can make a good movie about that. It won't be. I mean, it's not going to have a happy ending, of course, especially when you find out what happens to Gonger at the end. But just because it culturally, I guess, it's it was unacceptable at the time, and it I don't know if it's frowned upon now still, but you still can make an interesting drama out of it by internalizing the feeling of that character who wants to be something that society says she can't. It happens a lot in movies, and it could have been made into an interesting film. And
Yeah, and I think if it were made by a maybe like an American Chinese director, it could most certainly be possible. But
okay,
currently, with the direction of the Chinese movie industry, definitely not going to be done
okay,
by someone from mainland China.
okay. So that's the issue. Okay, then I that sucks. But okay, I guess that answers it. Um, what else here? Um, I find it interesting that the best fight scene in the movie is with Gong Er and Misan.
Yeah,
That's my
that
opinion. You may feel differently, but the fight scene between in the third act between Gong Er and Misan, I think, is the best fight scene in the movie. It's got the most drama. It has the best moves. It looks visually appealing, and it just for the I think it was a few minutes that was on. It worked, and it was really good. It was more entertaining than anything Ip Man did in the movie, which is kind of a problem because if you're basing this movie on this one guy being an absolute badass master of his martial arts, and then the film goes on to have the best fight scene being his wife and okay, not that that's a problem, but the problem that I have is that the best fight scene is completely disconnected to the main character because the fight between Misan and Gong Er, like I said, it has nothing to do with Ip Man. It has everything to do with Gong Er's family and her family heritage and the family style. I think it's called the 64 hands or 64
yeah
palms. Okay, so
yeah. It was more her sort of finishing the redemption arc that she tried to attempt much earlier in her life
yeah,
of reclaiming the secret technique that belonged to her father's school,
yeah,
and the male successor who decided to take the skill ended up doing something that in martial artist circles would have been completely dishonorable, which was betraying his own homeland.
right,
Because there's the scene in um, where they talk about the Japanese takeover uh, of China during the World War II conflicts and everything, and where just Ma San basically sells out the Chinese to the Japanese insurgency that takes over, and and pretty much just ends up betraying a lot of the values of the clan and everything. And of course, when Gong Er finds out that he sort of does something that is almost equivalent to heresy, um, she sort of she sort of goes on the redemption arc to reclaim the secret technique of her father's school. And the third act is kind of like um, it's kind of disjointed on how they're just like, okay, so you remember how she was going on this whole like redemption arc? Well, here's all the stuff that happened in between that time between her going on the redemption arc and then her returning, or not returning, but rather, no, actually, I stand corrected. She does return to Hong Kong
Yes.
because originally she was there for the Grandmaster ceremony stuff.
Hmm.
But yeah, just it was kind of a weird disjointed way of sort of kind of saying, hey, so in that 10-year gap, here's all the stuff that happened in 10 years.
Hmm.
So yeah, just sort of a really, really disjointed way of sort of looping that piece back in.
I mean, I wasn't bored throughout the film. I can't say I was. I was entertained. I just, like I said in the beginning here, I just was really disappointed with having such a good director involved in this, and definitely has a good visual eye. That it just the script just did it no favors at all in this, and um, the fight scenes are good. We mentioned it in the beforehand, where I still felt like the way it was directed was kind of strange, but yeah, the movie isn't that deep. Now that I really think about it, like the deepest character is Gong Er, and if what you're saying is that, excuse me, if what you're saying is that Ip Man is a very stoic person and maybe couldn't lend itself very well to having a deep characterization, then yeah, I don't know. I just sit here and wondering what could you do with that and make it an interesting movie with a character that is mostly stoic and doesn't really emote that much.
Yeah,
I mean,
and
he's had 5 movies now. The Ip Man series is now, what, 5 movies deep right now?
I think so.
And
Um,
they're mostly action films, so.
yeah. Um, it's a bit interesting with the film too because on doing some supplemental reading and everything,
Hmm.
I ended up learning about the fact that the Western cut actually had some changes done to it, and some of those changes may have either uh, reduced some context or emphasized context in a different way.
Okay,
So
that's possible.
so for me, it almost has me wondering, just uh, depending on if I can source a Chinese copy of the film and kind of see it sort of as a comparison. Um, like one of the scenes that I can see why some people didn't get why it didn't make sense was there's one scene where Ip Man talks about how he um, relocates from Foshan to Hong Kong,
Hmm.
and during the relocation process, he ends up having to try to take an odd job as a kung fu teacher,
Hmm.
and you see sort of a scene where just uh, it's a guy basically running like a small little kung fu school and everything, and he's just like, hey, well, um, I want to run this school, and he uh, sort of talks about just why he originally thinks that it's a bad idea because just the art that Ip Man studies only has three three attack postures,
Hmm.
and of course after that you just see like him sort of uh, counting some coins on a table and everything, and then you see this kind of like gang leader saying, "Hey, well, I need you to teach all of us." What was unfortunately cut out from that scene was in the Chinese edit.
Hmm.
Ip Man actually goes into sort of like a monologue about just um, about the type of people he refuses to teach kung fu to, that he doesn't um, want to take money and teach kung fu to dishonorable types, and things like that
Hmm.
before the coin counting scene. And just unfortunately, with that context being sort of ripped out of it, I can see why stuff like that scene might not make too much sense.
Right. And that's always possible in an edit to the U.S. If we look at IMDb, the movie clocks in. It says at 2 hours and 13 minutes. I watched it on Amazon last night, and it clocked in at an hour and 47. So it's clear that a lot was cut, and the reason why is because, and unfortunately this is true, U.S. audiences, except if it's a Marvel film, wants it to be cut concisely and to a point where no one's bored. So unless, again, it's a Marvel film, you they're gonna cut it to an hour 30, hour 45, and yeah, that has the potential to lose a lot of context and a lot of things that would help build the character. The question I would have, um, would the Chinese version have the same problem when it comes to the script? We're having Gong Er as the third act and having Ip Man not in the movie at all. I hate keep coming back to that, but it just blew me away in the worst way possible. To be like, you're taking your main character and throwing him out in the third act. Okay, that's a risk, but
Yeah, as far as that, I don't know since I
okay,
haven't quite gone out and sourced myself a copy of the Chinese version of the movie.
right,
So if I ever get a chance, it'll probably be more like a private conversation between me and you, more than
yeah,
likely if I do. But honestly, for me, it'd be interesting to sort of see what the case is and everything. Especially like one of the other things that is very different from the Chinese version of the movie and the Western version of the movie is in the Western version, you start out right from the get-go with the fight scene,
yes,
just
yes,
boom, right to the point of, yeah, this is going to be a martial arts movie. Whereas the Chinese edit starts with sort of the beginning of Ip Man's martial arts career,
mm,
which in the Western version, that little clip of him paying an exorbitant amount of money to the Wing Chun Kung Fu master in order to become a student, that sort of moved towards the end, and then uh, tied to the scene where um, it just jumps to Ip Man's Kung Fu school in Hong Kong, and uh, in the Western version, it's definitely much more emphasized that the young kid is the future Bruce Lee, whereas in the Chinese version, the identity of the young kid is sort of more quietly implied that it's Bruce Lee.
okay. So basically, the movie trusts the person's intelligence more in the Chinese edit than they do in the U.S. edit.
Yeah,
Eh,
but at
yeah,
the same time, I thought one thing that the Western edit did really well is for anyone who wasn't really quite familiar with all of the pivotal figures in the martial arts world, you had name cards being put up on the scenes that these particular people are introduced,
yeah,
which I thought was actually a really nice touch, especially since just with sort of all the dialogue that's going on, it's just sort of um, a lot to take in and everything.
right. Go ahead.
Um, uh, the other thing that was a little bit disappointing to see is um, the in one of the scenes where Ip Man is talking about the Japanese occupation and just sort of being patriotic to his country and everything. There's a scene where he's taken by some Japanese soldiers be brought over to, I guess, the area commander or something.
Mm-hmm.
And the commander basically says, "Hey, just if you sell your country out, we'll make sure that your family does not starve at all during our occupation, and we'll make sure that they are fed well and everything." And it's interesting because just in that particular scene, the these I guess the speech that Ibman has is really, really short. It's just kind of a um uh, I'm I'm not going to sell my country out, and that's final, is sort of the gist of it.
I think
Whereas,
the line was, "I'd rather starve than eat Japanese rice."
yep.
Yeah,
So um and in the Chinese edit, it's much more longer, um and I guess you could say, since this movie was funded by the Chinese government, it may have been kind of a overly patriotic diatribe that may have been cut. So
yeah, okay. Uh,
that one, it's kind of one of those interesting things of um did may is there a chance that it may have added something to that scene? Maybe, maybe not. It's just too hard to tell.
I mean, they really blew past the starving of his children and him moving to Hong Kong. Like they could have really went somewhere with that. I know some are like, I don't want to see kids starve, and I get it, but in order to actually to give such a stoic man some more character, and to give it more of a motivation, or to give it more pathos, you kind of want those scenes there, because then the stoic person is more reacting to the world around him, allowing emotion to happen, than if you're not going to give the person emotion in the first place. So that probably would have been a good idea to keep more of that in. But
Oh
okay.
yeah. And I definitely agree. And apparently that wasn't something that was emphasized too much on the Chinese edit either. So I
Oh,
think
really?
I think that is something that could have definitely been emphasized. Just sort of the brutality of losing both of his daughters due to starvation and
Yeah.
everything. Overall,
Okay.
not that I can think of.
Okay. Let's get to our final thoughts. Um. Yeah. So the Grandmaster, like I said before, is a visually good movie. It's fun to watch. It's got good fight scenes, but I just stand disappointed as a biopic, especially where the subject of the biopic is gone before the movie's over. So it's okay. I find it entertaining. I just expected more, and if I were to give it a rating out of 10, it would be like a 5, closer to a 6, but a 5. So that, I hate giving ratings, but that's how I would. I hate giving ratings, but I just to emphasize the point that I think this is an average film, and it could have been a lot better. But it's entertaining. So
Yeah, yeah, and at least from my take on the Western version of it, my score would probably fall pretty close in line with yours. Maybe 6.5 at
okay,
if I'm being generous. If we were to put a number to it, but yeah, just it's not an absolute terrible movie. It's not an exceptional movie. It's just kind of right planted in the middle. And again, just I've said it a few times throughout this podcast, but it really makes me wonder if the disjointed storytelling that a lot of Western reviewers had with this movie may be something that isn't that big of an issue in the Chinese version, and
yeah,
I'm almost kind of curious about maybe tossing down the 30-35 bucks for like a all region copy of the Chinese movie.
that's actually not a bad price for an all region movie.
Yeah.
Okay, okay. I mean, if you do, we'll talk about it in private. But uh, for anybody else who might be interested in, just have your expectations in check. Okay, Zero. Well, we're towards the end here, and with that, I have a question for you. Actually, I have two questions for you.
Okay.
Okay, first, We have to note the passing of Ray Liotta. Ray Liotta is an actor who is more well known for the movie Goodfellas, but he actually had, looking back, a very interesting career that even when he's in bad films, he's still entertaining. So, yeah, I'd have to ask if you're familiar with Ray Liotta's filmography.
I hate to
Oh, no.
concede to this, but
No.
I am
Zero,
not.
no! No! Okay, that's fine. That's fine. That's fine. Have you seen Goodfellas?
No, I haven't.
Oh! Okay, fine. It's fine. It's fine. That you know what then? That gives us an opportunity to get to see that movie because that is one of the best films in the '90s. So when we get to a point where we are at that, we'll definitely get you to watch that. Okay, I'll run by it quick then. Yeah, Ray Liotta is a good actor. He, of course, Goodfellas is his most praised role. He was also in Field of Dreams. The other movie that I don't see anybody talking about is Narc, which is a dark, I mean, really dark film. But he is actually really good in the movie. Another movie he was good in that was a terrible movie, but he was funny in, is a movie called Heartbreakers with Jennifer Love Hewitt and Sigourney Weaver. He played a New Jersey mobster, but in a comedic way. So I thought it was kind of funny. But yeah, sad to see that Ray Liotta died at 67. That's sad. And he was still doing movies to this day. The last one he did was Marriage Story, which I haven't seen, but I heard it's pretty good. So that sucks. Okay, let's get to the actual question then for you, Zero. Okay,
All right.
I'm going to read a tweet, and you're going to tell me what you think of this person's idea. Okay?
Okay.
Here's the tweet. I have an idea. When Marvel movies come out on digital or DVD, you can substitute Marvel movies for any movies. There should be a way to watch a version of the movie that has an audience reaction to it. The same way sitcoms have sound bites, imagine replicating the opening experience at the comfort of your own home. What do you think of that idea?
Interesting.
Okay, now let's. Can you expand on interesting, please? Because I really want to hear exactly your feelings of this.
When I say interesting, it's not really in either a bad or a good context. It's just kind
Okay.
of more interesting. I only say it because of one reason, and it's sort of a cultural reason.
Okay.
So, in Japanese TV show broadcasting, especially if it's something like their version of reality TV,
Mm-hmm.
they'll usually have like a picture-in-picture frame of like a person sort of reacting
Really?
during like a live action um, uh, reality TV show or sort of like a special with like a celebrity where they're maybe just trying to do something with a celebrity. They'll have like a picture-in-picture frame of like a person sort of reacting to kind of hint the audience, hey, this is how you should be feeling.
Yes. Okay.
And that's why I think it's sort of interesting that it's not really a good or a bad way of things.
Oh,
It's
come on.
just kind of, hey, this is the idea of just having a version of like um, Marvel movies or something with like an audience reaction track. It's really really interesting. Uh, just as an idea and everything.
Okay. Um, I used to go to theaters all the time to see movies, and I do miss being in a theater to watch a movie. The reason why I don't anymore is because of my social anxiety and agoraphobia. I just can't do it anymore. But the thing I did not miss, and people might find this funny, the thing I did not miss about seeing movies in theaters was other people. And that might be, to some, that's just stupid. Why wouldn't you want to have other people in the theater with you to watch a movie? and that's mainly because I couldn't hear the damn movie. So and that's why I really hated watching movies at opening night, because you'd get the most raucous crowds and they would talk over each other, and I guess in comedies it's fine because they're laughing and that kind of adds to it, but people don't understand when it comes to, let's say, sound bites from sitcoms. They didn't do it to make you feel like you're part of a group. They did to elicit a reaction. So maybe you don't find something funny you're watching, but because there is a laugh track, you still feel compelled to laugh, and that makes you think it's funny just because you're laughing, because you're reacting to the laugh track. And I get it's optional, and you can say, oh, it's optional, who cares? The issue I would have is that there's going to be some stupid executive who's going to look at this and go, why not have this in our movies without an option? Why not just have it in there? What would be the big deal? And I would guarantee it would happen, and it would ruin a movie. Like we're gonna. Well, okay. Let's put it this way. Let's say you're watching a romance movie, and they're going to the part where they're going to kiss, and all of a sudden you hear the whooping from Full House when two people kiss, going woo. That would be terrible. I would.
Oh yeah.
It would be awful. Or what this guy is. I'm not saying his name, but what this guy would go on to cite was, imagine hearing the reaction of seeing a cameo from a certain actor or a certain hero whenever you watch it, to relive that. That would be awful. I mean, because to me, like I said, I hate, like, I get people are going to get excited, but I kind of put up with people getting excited and being like, okay, yeah, they're excited, big deal, whatever, fine. But to have that pop up every time that you watch the movie would be super annoying, because to me, it wouldn't bring nostalgia back. It was like, oh, remember that sticky floor that was standing in when I watched Spider-Man No Way Home, and Doctor Strange popped up? Wow, that really brings back memories. No, what I'm gonna be like is, oh God, shut the fuck up, please. Just,
Yeah.
oh Lord.
And to your point about like just like a track of people from Full House reacting to like a kissing scene, I could just see especially if some crazy exec was just like, yeah, this is a thing we got to add.
Yeah.
I could just see like an applause track for like when like the main character has sex with somebody. You'd just be like, oh, they're doing it. Ah! And just applause track. I would just be like, oh God, why?
Okay. You know what? If that's the case, if they do that, then I better hear someone loudly masturbating in the theater. And just, oh yeah. And just really go at it. Just be like, oh my God, what's going on in there?
Oh my God, that
like
would
a
be
little Kim
terrible.
track. Oh God! Or someone barfing when they're watching a Cronenberg film. Be like, "Oh my God, I can't believe I'm like." Then you have me. But no, this is a terrible idea. And whoever this is that is suggesting it, I don't want to say there's wrong suggestions, but this was, ew. No, come on, be better.
Yeah, the only reason I could maybe think of something like this might be seen as a good thing is maybe for viewers who are deaf or blind. That way they have some sort of, I guess, reference to go off of.
But if they're deaf, they're not going to hear the reaction.
Well, I mean, you can transcode it to like Braille.
Yeah, yeah, okay, yes, of course. But I think someone who is deaf or blind would rather just know the particulars of the film than to be like, and Jane said this to John, and then woo! No,
Yeah.
I think they could be like, what the fuck is this? What's going on?
Yeah.
Like, no,
Yeah.
I think they would just be like, get this shit out of here.
Yeah, I mean, and even then, like I said, it would be more of a, like, just it would have to be extremely optional. Just no way that this should be like
Yeah.
the default replacement,
Look,
because that would just be horrible.
yeah, like I get it. If it's optional, fine, whatever. But the problem always is someone is going to say, "What if it's not optional?" I mean, they like it, right? So
Yep.
why don't we just put it in there? What's the big deal?
Yep.
And
Yeah, there's
that's
always that one weird exec that
eh,
might have that idea crawl right up their ass.
like, just imagine watching Citizen Kane, and in the beginning of the movie, he says Rosebud, and then someone's like, "He said the line!" Oh, like, I'm just like, Jesus Christ. Like,
Uh,
I mean, I'm being kind of a wise ass on this, but just for somebody, I guess for somebody like me who loves films and prefers to watch them alone in silence, again, and yes, with a notebook or with something to write down notes, I just find this appalling. So yeah,
yeah.
I thought
Yeah, and I'm definitely with you.
yeah.
It's just not really a great way to experience a film and everything, especially if your enjoyment of a film is sort of dependent on the reaction of an audience.
And with some people
That's
that
just
is, and it's fine. But then go
yeah.
watch
I
it in the
mean,
movies. Go watch it in the theater.
yeah, yeah. That's why there's the theater experience, or if it's a straight to DVD or straight to Blu-ray experience,
Yeah.
gather your friends and just watch it in your living room and with your home theater setup.
Yeah. The best reaction I got from this tweet was this: "Why don't you just get some bitches?" That was the tweet of the day for me. I was like, there you go. But yeah, I mean, if you put it in a laugh track, it's gonna feel inauthentic. So I know of one director who does do this, who does who made a movie and put an audience track in it. I think it's Robert Rodriguez. He did Sin City. He did Once Upon a Time in Mexico, Desperado. I forgot what movie he used it on, but he did do this once. And I don't know what the reaction was to it. And you know what? I don't want to know the reaction to it because I don't want to give it any more breath. So, there. Terrible idea, but I thought maybe I'd spring this on you and see what you think. Okay,
Yeah.
so we are at the end of the episode, which means we have to talk about what we're watching next. Now, this is usually, since you chose last time, it's my turn. But I hate choosing movies, so what I do is I give Zero a list, or give him an option, and say, you choose out of this, and we'll go with that. Zero, I gave you the list of 100 movies for 100 years from AFI. AFI is the American Film Institute. They preserve films, American films, to be preserved for future generations. I said you pick out of the 100. What did you pick?
I went with a classic. I went with Casablanca.
Yes, nice. Casablanca, the Humphrey Bogart film that, of course, has a bunch of famous lines, a bunch of famous scenes, and it is a legit film classic. And I am excited to see what you think of this film, especially since you've told me you haven't seen this.
Yeah, I have not.
Yes.
It's been one of those that I've always been meaning to watch and everything. And at the same time, it's just like, well, if I watch it, it'll be nice, but just I don't really have somebody to sort of kind of discuss it as somebody who's been completely insulated from the film.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So just that's why just for me, I was just like, oh, if we're gonna go with something from like the AFI's 100th anniversary list for their top 100, then yeah, just this is something that I'd love to sort of check out and everything.
If you want to watch along with us, right now, if you have HBO Max, it is actually running on there. I think that's how we're going to watch this. Otherwise, if you go on Vudu, Apple TV, Amazon Prime Video, YouTube, it's $3.99 to rent it. So just keep that in mind. So if you have HBO Max, you're set. You can watch with us. And then also, if you have a suggestion of what you want us to watch, because we definitely do take suggestions, you can email us at zerowizcast@gmail.com, or you can just comment on where you see this and give us a suggestion of what you want us to watch. So there we go. And on that note, that is it for this episode of the Capital Games Movie Club. Tune in next week where we're going to discuss Casablanca, the Michael Curtis film from 1942. I am The Wiz.
And I'm Zero.
And we will talk next time.